For good measure, I spent the remainder of the lesson going over the science behind my little illusion again, in order to try and allay their uncertainties and fears. It was almost funny. This lesson went even better than the previous one, as every student was held in a rapt state of attention. The whole class clung to my every word. They took notes, drew diagrams, asked deep and pertinent questions on and around the subject. They even completed all of their group work with nary a ripple of disruption. I understood, of course, exactly what they were doing. They were trying their very best to understand what had happened to them yesterday, so that they could really try and put it behind them. I'd always seen scientists as brave pioneers into the unknown, but looking across their steadily brightening faces, I saw how science could just as easily be a comforting blanket, a rational barrier against the demons of the unknown. By the end of the class, the horror of the previous day seemed to have well and truly faded, and was replaced by a joking camaraderie. Kids who would normally have been at each other's throats in group session were working without issue. They even seemed positively friendly with each other, in a way only a group who've experienced a shared hardship could be. It was a fantastic sight. My earlier doubts about whether I'd gone too far were still there, but to look at them working productively and peacefully with each other, it was difficult to be too concerned. Jake still played on my mind, though. I'm sure he was fine. He made truancy into an art form, but his text about needing to turn off the sound in the middle of the night still made me nervous. But the lesson had one last shot for my nerves in store. It concluded without issue, and concerns for Jake aside, I genuinely thought that maybe I'd turned a corner with this class. I'd need to be far more careful if I was going to use it with any other classes in the future, though. I had been completely unprepared for the intensity of the visions and the feelings of sheer terror. But it didn't seem to be anything that a bit of personal experimentation with the equipment couldn't refine in order to get the right level. And just looking at the quality of work that the class had just produced, it was going to be easy to get the head of science to sign off on the experiment for future use. I was still running through these thoughts and contemplating what modifications to try next when, as the class were leaving, one girl asked to see me for a minute. In the now empty classroom she stood, staring intently at her shoes and refusing to look me in the eye. "What is it, Amy?" She shifted her weight uncomfortably. "Sir, did—" She was having trouble formulating her question. "Were the speakers on just then?" "When?" "During the lesson?" "No. Why?" The color drained from her face as she weakly answered, "Oh, nothing, nothing." She scuttled out of the room, clearly needing to be anywhere but in that classroom. I wanted to call after her, chase her even, in order to clarify what she meant, but I was distracted by something skittering across the room out of the corner of my eye. I didn't get a clear look, and by the time I'd spun around to try and see, it had gone. I turned back to the corridor to shout after Amy, but she too had disappeared just as suddenly. Her question had disturbed me, and my mind returned to Jake. I used the morning break to contact the office to see if there was any word on him. Jake Tandy, Class G2. Any word from him or his parents as to where he is today? I asked the office girl in charge of monitoring attendance. She was about to answer when a gray smudge darted across the doorway to my right and pulled my attention away. I was still staring intently at the door when, out of nowhere, Richard, my head of year, stuck his head into the room and asked to borrow me for a moment. He ushered me into his office and closed the door. Jake Tandy was reported missing as of 9:30 a.m. this morning. What? By whom? His mother. When she noticed he wasn't in bed this morning, she called round a couple of his girlfriends' houses to find out if he'd snuck out. None of them had seen him. When she called us to find out if he was in school, we told her he wasn't here. Her next call, obviously, was to the police. Now, one of our students is officially missing. My mind was overwhelmed with questions. The playful grin that was on his face when I first told him of the demonstration was well and truly gone, replaced by an unshifting expression of grave concern. The police found Jake's phone in his room, and the final message sent details him going to find the source of a sound. They want to know what that means. Of course. Do they need a formal statement? I don't know. You can ask them yourselves. They want to talk to you as soon as we're finished. Now listen. Listen carefully. I'm sure I don't have to tell you how serious the consequences of this could be if Jake doesn't turn up quickly. This experiment you ran. Please tell me you ran some basic safety tests or ran a risk assessment. How could I have been so stupid? I didn't do so much as a test run before the lessons, let alone do something as sensible as documenting a full risk assessment. My complete, unforgivable incompetence must have been written across my face, because before I could answer, Richard interrupted. You fucking fool. I had to focus all my strength to not burst into tears right there in his office. My eyes were damp, but I maintained composure. Answer me this, and you had better answer truthfully, Richard continued. Do you have any cause for any form of concern for any of your other students? Amy, I uttered quietly, still staring at my hands to avoid revealing my increasingly watery eyes. What? I raised my head to meet his gaze. Amy Sunderland. She approached me after class today to ask. My heart stopped. Stood over each of Richard's shoulders were two towering, shadowy figures. Through the blur of my tears I couldn't make out even basic features. I wasn't even sure they had any. All I could see was that they were definitely human-shaped. I was frozen with dread, and a feeling of deep panic started welling up in my stomach. What did Amy ask? I rubbed my eyes dry in order to answer him. Once I'd cleared my sight, the figures were gone. I looked around, but there was nothing and no one else there any more. Answer me, damn it! She asked if I had the speakers on during today's lesson. I tried to ask her why, but she wouldn't answer me. And did you have them on? No. Right. Tell the police that. Tell them everything. I'll send them in. Richard stood up to leave and walked towards the door. I felt him stand behind me and place a reassuring hand on my shoulder. I couldn't believe how irresponsible I'd been, how reckless. I'd been so caught up in my own ambition that I hadn't even taken basic precautions, and now I was paying for it. I just hoped Jake was all right. I knew Richard was furious with me, but feeling his protective hand on my shoulder meant maybe there was a way to fix it all. I heard Richard outside telling the officers to head in. Wait. Richard was outside? Then whose hand? I spun around to see an empty classroom. I desperately tried to contain the panic now coursing through my veins. What was happening to me? It was just a fucking illusion. 2 officers entered the room. Good morning. Thank you for talking with us. Now, tell me about infrasound. Through the tension, I almost laughed. Where to begin?